She has nearly 1 million subscribers, a candle brand she spent 4 years building in secret, a 110-year-old cottage she bought and stripped back to the bones, and a life story that most of her audience has never come close to hearing. Because while the channel looks like beautiful rooms and thrift store finds and satisfying before and afters, the real story of MaCenna Lee is something else entirely. It's a story of a girl who spent years grinding through jobs she was overqualified for, climbing a corporate ladder she eventually had to walk away from, and betting everything on a camera, a cluttered apartment, and a skill she'd been quietly developing her entire life. And the part that most people miss? She planned every single step of it. MaCenna Lee was born in the summer of 1988 in Sulphur, Louisiana. It's a small city in the southwestern corner of the state, the kind of place where crawfish boils are a social event, where kids grow up catching frogs and camping with their grandparents, and where the pace of life gives you a lot of time to figure out who you are. She was a creative kid from the jump, not in a vague way, in a specific, hands-on, can't-sit-still kind of way. She would take things apart just to understand how they were made. She made gifts for family members out of things she'd found outside. She had an eye for how spaces looked and felt before she had any language to describe it. When she was 9, her family moved to a small town south of Houston, Texas. That's where she really grew up, and where her mother's career started shaping everything that came after. Her mom was an interior designer, and she didn't just talk about her work at dinner, she brought MaCenna along. Job sites, client walkthroughs, rooms mid-renovation, MaCenna saw it all from the front row. That exposure wasn't formal education. It was something more valuable than that. It was instinct, developed slowly over years of watching someone she trusted transform spaces for a living. And then in 2000, when MaCenna was around 12, her mother took things a step further and opened her own home decor boutique. MaCenna was there every day after school and every weekend. She helped redecorate the showroom. She traveled to home markets with her mom to buy new products. She learned how to sell, how to present, how to read a room, literally and figuratively. By the time she hit high school, she was already taking on design clients of her own. Most kids that age are trying to figure out what they want to do. MaCenna had already been doing it for years. By high school, her attention had shifted toward fashion. She became obsessed with Project Runway, the design process, the competition, the idea that you could make something from nothing and have people react to it in real time. She decided that was the path. Fashion design, Los Angeles, the whole thing. In 2007, she got accepted to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles. She packed everything she owned into 3 suitcases and moved to a city where she didn't know a single person. By her own account, she loved every second of it, even the all-nighters, even the pressure, even the parts that were supposed to be hard. She graduated with honors, earning both an Associate of Arts in Fashion Design and a Bachelor of Science in Business Management. That business management degree wasn't an accident. Even then, she was thinking in 2 tracks at once, the creative side and the side that made the creative side sustainable. But she also discovered something unexpected during those years. She didn't actually enjoy designing clothes as much as she thought she would. The clothes part was fine. But sitting at a desk making patterns and sewing for the rest of her career, that wasn't it. The realization came quietly, but it came clearly. And while she was working that out, something else happened that would change everything about the next decade of her life. In 2008, she was working shifts at an Italian restaurant in downtown Los Angeles to cover expenses between classes. That's where she met Romeo, the guy she'd eventually spend the next 15-plus years with. She wasn't looking for it. It just happened, the way the most important things tend to. After graduation, she did what most people do. She started working her way in. Internship after internship, most of them unpaid. Fashion companies in Los Angeles. She attended shows, designed collections, put in the time. But the more she worked in fashion design, the clearer it became that it wasn't where she was meant to be. She pivoted to marketing. That turned out to be a much better fit, creative enough to keep her engaged, structured enough to play to the business instincts she'd been building since her mother's boutique. In 2011, she took an entry-level position in the marketing department at Chan Lu, a Los Angeles-based lifestyle and jewelry brand. And then she got to work. Over the next several years, she moved up. She was good at it, not just at the creative side, but at the operational side, the leadership side, the parts that most creative people find exhausting. By 2015, she was the vice president of sales and marketing at Chan Lu. She was 26 years old, running a department, managing teams, and doing a job that looked impressive from the outside. The problem was what it felt like from the inside. She described it as becoming less and less creative by the second. The higher she'd climbed, the further she'd gotten from the thing she actually wanted to be doing. More meetings, more management, less making. She'd always dreamed of owning her own business, and the longer she stayed, the more that felt like a dream she was actively moving away from. In 2017, after 3 years in the VP role, she walked away from Chan Lu. She had savings, she had a plan, or at least the outline of one. She took on freelance work to cover income and started trying out different business ideas. Some of them didn't work. Several of them didn't work. And then, slowly, she found herself drifting back toward the thing that had always come naturally. She started doing design projects around her own home, and she started feeling something she hadn't felt at work in years. In August 2018, she launched a YouTube channel called MaCenna. Her first video came a few months later, a concrete desk she'd built using an IKEA frame. Nothing fancy, no production team, no sponsor, just a project she'd done in her apartment, filmed and posted. What made her different from the beginning wasn't the production quality, it was the thinking behind it. She had studied YouTube from a marketing perspective before she ever started creating. She understood that YouTube, owned by Google, was the platform that rewarded creators most consistently, algorithmically and financially. She understood the monetization threshold she needed to hit. She understood what was working in her niche at the time and started there, on a limited budget, doing thrift store finds and small DIY projects because that was what she could actually afford to make. But she also understood something less obvious, and it turned out to be her biggest competitive advantage. She knew that chasing the algorithm was a losing game long term, so she focused on something the algorithm can't manufacture, a real community. She showed up on a consistent schedule. She engaged with the people watching. She built a routine that her audience could rely on every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Sunday. And the audience responded in kind. They didn't just subscribe. They turned on notifications. They came back regardless of what was on their homepage. She was building something that didn't depend on any platform's mood. Within a few years, she had over 650,000 subscribers. Brand deals with Benjamin Moore and Lowe's followed, but she wasn't comfortable depending on any of that. In February 2021, she and Romeo bought a 110-year-old cottage. It wasn't a fixer-upper in the polished TV renovation sense. It was a genuinely old house with 100 years of decisions layered on top of each other, and they were going to strip it back and rebuild it on camera. That decision transformed the channel. Before the cottage, she was making strong individual project videos. After the cottage, she had something with narrative momentum, a story that viewers came back to because they wanted to see what happened next. The kitchen renovation became a 10-episode series. The individual rooms each had their own arc. You weren't just watching someone paint a wall. You were invested in what the space was going to become. That kind of bingeability doesn't happen by accident. She understood that the best content isn't just instructional, it has stakes. And when the house is actually yours, when the decisions are real and the mess is real and the frustration is real, the stakes are already there. You don't have to manufacture them. The cottage gave the channel a second gear. It also gave her audience a reason to feel personally connected to what she was building, because in a real sense, they were watching her build her home. Meanwhile, behind every video and renovation update, something else had been quietly in progress for years. In 2019, less than a year after launching the channel, MaCenna started sketching ideas for a product of her own. She'd always known that most creators eventually launch something, and she'd always known that when she did it, it would have to be something she could stand behind completely. No branded hoodies, no slogan merchandise, something that reflected who she actually was and what she actually cared about. She settled on candles. But the concept evolved far beyond the product itself. She spent years obsessing over the vessel, the glass container the candle would sit in, because she wanted to design something so beautiful that nobody would ever want to throw it away. She was inspired by vintage glassware, the kind you find at flea markets that looks like it was built to outlast everything around it. The vessels she developed could be repurposed after the candle burned down, as a drinking glass, a vase, a holder for brushes or pens, a planter. The idea was to make waste an afterthought. The packaging was personal too. On the inside of every recycled box, she printed her mother's paintings. The same woman who had taken her to job sites as a kid, who had opened a boutique and taught her what it meant to care about a space. You could open the box, cut it up, and use the panels as artwork. Nothing wasted, nothing thrown away. She called the brand Odin Lure. The name combined a word of British origin meaning old friend with the French word for glow. 4 years of development, 4 years of testing fragrances, rejecting vessel designs, sourcing materials, and building out a product that met the standard she'd set from the beginning. She kept almost all of it hidden from her audience. When Odin Lure launched in late 2023, the community she'd spent 5 years building responded immediately. The brand became her biggest single revenue stream, and more importantly, it meant she was no longer dependent on how any given brand's marketing budget was doing that year, or whether the algorithm was sending traffic her way, or whether a sponsor renewed. She had built something that belonged entirely to her. And then, days after the launch, while the comment sections were still lighting up over the candle brand, she made a completely different kind of announcement. She was pregnant. Romeo, the man she had met at a restaurant in downtown Los Angeles in 2008, her partner through the corporate grind and the freelance years and the slow build of the channel and the 4 years of secret product development. They were having a baby, due in June 2024. The audience reacted in the way audiences do when someone they've been watching for years shares something genuinely personal: joy, shock, warmth. People who had been watching her renovate the cottage and flip thrifted furniture felt like they were hearing news from someone they actually knew. In a way, after years of showing up consistently and sharing the real texture of her life, she had created exactly that. What the comments didn't fully absorb, but what becomes clear when you look at the timeline, is that the timing wasn't accidental. She had spent 4 years building a product-based revenue stream specifically so that her income wouldn't collapse the moment she stepped back. She had methodically reduced her dependence on brand deal cycles and algorithmic traffic before she ever announced a pregnancy. The candle brand launched, the pregnancy came public, and the infrastructure was already in place. It was the same thinking she'd applied to every other step. Build the foundation first, then make the move. That's the through line in MaCenna Lee's story that tends to get buried under the aesthetics. Every chapter looks like a creative choice, and it is. But underneath every creative choice is a business decision. She didn't move to Los Angeles on a whim. She got accepted to one of the most respected design schools in the country. She didn't leave Chandlu impulsively. She saved money, lined up freelance income, and gave herself a runway. She didn't just start posting videos. She studied the platform from a marketing perspective before she made a single one. She didn't launch a candle brand because it seemed like a fun idea. She spent 4 years developing it until it was something she was genuinely proud of. The result is a creator who's built something with real longevity, not because the algorithm is on her side, not because she went viral at the right moment, but because she treated creativity and business as two sides of the same operation, the way her mother did in a boutique south of Houston, with a kid redecorating the showroom every weekend after school. Most of her audience sees the finished rooms and the beautiful vessels and the well-edited videos. They don't see the Italian restaurant in 2008, or the suitcases packed for a city where she didn't know a soul, or the 3 years of climbing toward a job she ultimately had to walk away from. They don't see the business ideas that failed before YouTube, or the 4 years of silence around a product she wasn't ready to release yet. But those are the years that built everything visible in the channel today. The renovation series, the community, the brand. None of it is accidental. It's the result of someone who has always understood that if you want something to last, you have to build it properly the first time. And if her track record says anything about what comes next, whatever she's working on right now, her audience almost certainly won't see it coming.